So my friend Justin, we're going to talk about Pig. So should we do spoilers? Almost have to, right?
Well, I think if you're getting into like the psychological or like just anything that's dealing with like the actual, I guess it is because you're dealing with the meat of it.
The meat, that's a pun, right? Because he's a
Yeah.
eh. Yeah, so it
uh,
has to be yeah, so it has to be spoilers. Yeah, because yeah, otherwise you have to be so oblique that you're not really saying anything at all.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what was your impression of it overall? Like good, bad, eh?
Um, I would say that I was like, oh, Nicolas Cage can actually act. That's definitely one of the biggest things, and it was really what's a good way to put it? It doesn't feel like a movie in its time. It's definitely Nicolas Cage's character, was it something Feld? I forgot his first name.
Chef. They
Oh
yeah,
yeah, Chef
wasn't that
Feld.
Rob or something?
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
Robin Feld.
yeah.
He's an anachronism almost to that society, or at least that's how he's kind of portrayed. I mean, the best way to describe his anachronism is that he has a bloody face the entire movie. That's not society,
Man, yeah, and
and he's long johns.
yeah, and so it was over. So I think yeah, my impression that was it was kind of amazing, and I think it was maybe because Nicolas Cage is doing the opposite of what he usually does, which he usually overacts, and this one he was way, 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 way dialed down, right? And so with a lot
Mm.
of subtlety, I think in a lot. I mean, there were a lot of scenes where it's just his face, and he's not really affected a whole lot. He's just kind of sitting
Yeah.
there responding to things.
Well, is it the idea that he's a method actor? So when you put him in the mundane world, because he method acts, he's going to actually be toned naturally, but still be very intense.
Yeah, intense is a yeah. Because there was a scene, especially that scene where he's at the restaurant and
Hmm.
that other well, I guess used to work for him or something.
Yeah.
It's the most famous scene in this. If you Google it, you see, or
Okay.
on YouTube search it, you're going to see that restaurant scene, and he basically sort of demolishes this guy, but in a kind way. Like he's not mean to this guy, but he
He's
completely puts him in his place, which is he's he's so inauthentic as a person, right?
it's
And
a good way to put it is it directly contrasts to the scene prior. Um I like to think of it as those two scenes is like a representation of how he was as a chef. If you want to see how he was as a chef, those two scenes together give you a picture. And the scene I'm talking about is when they go to the underground. It's not really a fighting arena. It's just literally a beat. It's
a,
just a pummeling,
beat up club rather than
or
fight club.
stoning. Actually, we can call it a stoning arena. That's
So
what it
what was up
was.
with that? Was that like? I mean, that
I have a.
almost seemed out of place. I don't
It's
know. It,
not though. It's not. So think of the world that they're in. So they're in a world of cooking, and if you like watch Gordon Ramsay or you watch other chefs, they talk about the intensity and they talk about how aggressive the head chefs are because they're demanding perfection. Like I think if you think about uh, think about the fact that whenever a customer comes in there, they're expecting great food. So
yeah,
there's no wiggle room for that head chef because everything that's put out there is a representation of that head chef. So he has to be very very hard, or whoever the head chef has to be very very hard. And so I think of it from the military standpoint. Um, there's going to be this requirement for perfection, even though it may not be possible. So they're going to
mhm.
constantly pummel you, pummel you, pummel you. So that stoning underground arena, what that is it allows head chefs to go down there, and people can pay to basically attack the head chef that has caused them pain. It's a catharsis. It's a catharsis to those that feel like they're wrong. It's a way to get their emotions out because sometimes the only way to get that emotion out is to go after the thing that's harmed you or to cause some level. Um, I think that's probably an unhealthy way to do it that the community picked.
Mhm.
Like there's other ways to like I know I've seen commands buy cars and then to get the money back and raise money as a fundraiser, you'll pay to like hit the car with a sledgehammer or like grab a tool and break it. So it's to release that energy.
Yeah.
And that's what that
And
scene is about.
and so like uh an assistant chef could pay to beat up his boss or
Hmm.
something.
That's the whole point of it. That's literally the point of it. The point is, um, you have made my life hell. I'm going to hit you to feel better. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't disrespect him, because if you see it, every single one of them has respect for Nicolas Cage's character, Robin Feld. All of them
Mhm.
have respect for him, but that doesn't mean that they don't have this lingering emotion that the only way they can think to remove it is to hit him. And the thing is that bidding they're doing, whoever gets the most is the one that can cause the damage. But all of
Mhm.
them, by doing that bidding, they're enacting. They're bidding on who's the avatar to release that energy at the chef.
And then they're forgiven, right? When they come back up
Hmm.
to the ground to the street level, there's
Yeah,
no heart, like they don't bring that with them,
yeah.
or supposedly, right?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you wouldn't, because of how integrated that community is going to be. They're not going to carry that on.
Mhm.
It's and if they do, those people will be called out and probably removed because they aren't part of that environment. They're not acting in the way that culture is demanding.
Yeah.
So, so yes, it's a very negative tradition in terms of its action, but it has a place for a very, very, very specific purpose. Um, you could almost think of it like what any probably civilized culture sees a barbarian culture may do that seems really bad, but that serves a very specific purpose that actually is for the betterment. Um, and
So then that scene in the restaurant relates to that because it's like him putting that chef, the inauthentic chef, sort of in his place or something.
well, it's so you'd say the underground is the catharsis or movement of negative energy towards Robin, while the flip side of it is Robin acting as the father to the community, because that's what
Mhm.
he is. If you think about it, he's the godfather of the community. Like the main antagonist, you could say, even mentions that you started this community, so he's the godfather. So
Yeah.
what he says is basically like is basically law. So I mean, what does a father do to someone he
Yeah.
thinks is wayward?
Yeah, and I mean that scene is just so amazing because he asks the chef these questions like, what's your theme? What's your inspiration? Whatever. The guy just gives him these canned answers that are so trite and just mean nothing. And then he just looks right through him and just like burns his soul pretty much. And it
Yeah.
just that scene, the way Nicolas Cage handles that, I think is so powerful.
And
Man.
well, that chef isn't angry at Robin. He's actually very grateful. And Robin's pointing out something to him. He's saying what you love may not be the easiest, may not be something that others enjoy, but um,
Yeah.
if it's great, which I think is what how Robin Feld was, if what you do is great, people will still come. Um,
Yeah, and even
and
if they don't, you've been true to yourself. You're not.
yeah,
And the idea what that they're not real, the critics aren't real, these people aren't. They don't care about you.
they
And
don't.
man,
You know
it's
who does care? The person that wants to pay to punch you.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
person that probably actually cares about you.
Or you care about you. So like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, are you able to look back and say, man, I what was it like English pub food that he wanted to do or
It was
something?
food. Let's put it
And
this way: if I went up to Portland, it's a place I would go to.
oh man,
So
English pubs are the best places ever.
I mean, one of my favorite things to eat when I was in New York, I went to an Irish pub. I ate a whole bunch of bangers and mash, or
Oh
like
yeah,
or corn hat, or corn hash, like things that to like a yuppie would look disgusting.
but it tastes so good.
It
Yeah,
does. That
yeah.
scene is actually what got me. So the one thing I actually wrote about this was food helps create color. So this is going to the idea about creating this pub. Different seasoned food brings different people together. If well seasoned and cooked food tastes like civilization. So it's the idea that um that when we master something, because of all the options we have, its civilization is there. So there's this community that's been developed. Um, then different styles of food creates culture integration. So,
Hmm.
and then food brings us together and melts animosity, because if is all most treaties are done over cooking at some point. At some point, we all have our dinner. So music soothes rage, painting and sculpting causes us to slow down, and food brings us together. So it's to point out that there's these different artistic beauties that we have capabilities of doing that all serve an actual fundamental purpose for civilization,
Hmm.
and culture. And so, I mean, I'm trying to think of that from like a Christian standpoint, how that works. And
Well, there's a book, I can't remember what it's called, but something about reading literature like an English professor or something, and talks about every time there's a meal in a book or a movie, it's always communion. Like that's what it means. They're not eating to eat. They're eating because they're building community, and there's a relationship there. So it's meaningless what they're eating. It's only meaningful that they are together sharing something that's going to give them energy. And it's like the same, if we're eating the same food, we're getting the same energy, and that ties us together. So,
that
yeah.
brings a challenge that I did in the military. So when I was on submarines and we went out to eat, everybody would put their cell phones in the middle. Whoever picked up their cell phone first had to pay for everybody's meal. And so the goal was, when you're there, you're there. You're not
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're pointing out from that book. It's that you have to be present. You're not allowed to not be present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
have you ever had truffles before? I don't think I've ever had truffles.
uh I think I'm gonna have to say yes. Not because of
You're so pretentious.
a
Yes.
little bit, just a little bit. Uh and the reason why I've had truffles is because of my grandpa. So my grandpa, he was he was interesting. He didn't try a lot of food. Like, he did try food. But he didn't try like a lot of different places to eat. But there's actually a 5-star. There is a Michelin star restaurant in Salem that we went to. I don't know if it's a Michelin star restaurant now.
Hmm.
I just know at the time it was, and I don't know how many stars it was, but it definitely was. And we had one. We had I had probably I think I had like truffle, like potatoes and truffles is what I had,
Hmm.
which was amazing. But the thing that was more amazing is I'm not a fan of mushrooms normally, but the appetizer they brought out was a mushroom appetizer, and it's one of the best appetizers I've ever eaten before.
Wow.
Um, and that's what good cooking does.
Yeah. 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 It can make something that's not, you're not a big fan of, actually, it's good. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. So I think we talked about this. There's like so many analogies in this movie, um, where Nicolas Cage's character and then the father, Alan Arkin, I think the
Yeah,
actor is there. Um, the analogies between those two guys it's pretty powerful, right?
it's
It's
it's well, I know that we were talking about
or I thought it was powerful. You should agree with me. Yeah,
oh,
there you
okay.
go.
That the fight scene down below, your response is almost the exact same as Ryan's. So it was the idea that I think if you haven't been in that style of extreme culture, you won't actually understand that scene. And I think that's actually important. I think people that
Were you
haven't
guys
been
doing that in the submarine, like beating each other up and stuff?
oh yeah, we'll do that. I'm serious, we will. But it's all for fun, even though everything around us is metal. So you're gonna split your head open, which is, but you just laugh it off and you keep going. And that's what it was. You laughed it off and kept going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember we were talking about it, and it felt like both of them were going through the exact same thing, but were responding to it differently. Like,
Yeah,
I think,
because
yeah,
so we'll do spoilers. So Rob's character, his wife dies, and you kind of find that out throughout the movie. It's not like up front, here's what's going on. You just have to admit, and that's what I really like this movie. Like when movies think that you're smart enough to put things together and they don't have to spell it out for you in a galaxy far, far away, whatever, and they put all front. It's like, because art should show and not tell. And so
yes,
you figure it out as it happens, and you realize, oh, his wife died. And he's got this pig that it's like a dog basically, and it sniffs
hmm
truffles. But then you find out, don't they point out that he really doesn't need the pig for finding
yeah,
truffles because he can
he,
do it himself?
yeah.
And
He says it's the trees.
yeah,
The trees tell you where it's at. He's like, I've never. He said I've never needed the pig,
yeah, yeah.
which it makes you wonder how much knowledge he has.
But and so he's able to do that. And so you find out his wife died. And then also you find out Alan Arkin's wife sort of died. It sounds like she probably tried to kill herself or something, and it
I
didn't
think it was,
happen. And so she's
yeah,
on like life support or something.
it was. She either had an unsuccessful attempt,
Yeah.
or she had some like very rare disease.
Yeah.
It
So
was,
something, but I think, I mean, this what I picked up was that he was keeping her alive, basically.
yeah.
Like, they could have let her go, but he was somehow having them keep her alive
Oh, that
artificially or something.
okay. I remember more of it now. It was the argument between two. The argument got so bad she did something.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wonder if the difference between the two is more of the fact that Nicolas Cage's character is just trying to find a way to keep his wife's memory alive, while the other character is trying to not feel guilty about the events.
Yeah, yeah. And either way, again, I think I mentioned this as I asked you if you'd seen Lars and the Real Girl,
No, I
and
haven't.
maybe we should watch that and then talk about that next time,
Yeah.
because I think it's exactly the same movie basically, even though the premises are totally different. Because I think what's happening is Rob's character this pig has become a substitute for his wife, because even at the beginning there's like a cassette tape that obviously is a message from her, and he starts
hmm
listening, he can't listen anymore because something's happened where he just can't deal with the memory or whatever. And it seems like Alan Arkin's character is doing the same thing because he can't let her go, and they're both artificially holding on to it. And then that's when he finds out the pig is dead and just loses it, right? I mean, then he
hmm
goes kind of Nicolas Cage in a more traditional sense. But then he goes back and he's able to listen to the tape, and he's able to, and so I think what's happening is it's about mourning. It's about, if something is dead, you have to acknowledge that it's dead, and you have to go move on. And because the longer you hold on to it, you can never heal until you acknowledge that loss.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, so I'm like trying to think of like generic like arcs that each character was taking, like where their goal was. Because it feels like for Nicholas, or Robin Feld, when the pig is finally discovered dead. By the way, that's a major spoiler. I don't know.
I think they're all spoilers here. Yeah.
But
So
I think a normal person could figure it out. I mean, I guess I had hope the entire time. And I think
yeah,
as the audience, and most audience will have hope the entire time, but I think there'll be a couple cynics out there that won't.
yeah, yeah.
But I wonder if I wonder if the entire movie is stage 1 of grief for Nicolas Cage.
Exactly. Yeah, I think
And
so. Yeah.
that's all it is. It's stage
Or
1 of grief.
what's the? I mean, the last one's or is it? What's? I can't remember how that works now.
The first stage is denial. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
the entire
Exactly.
movie
Yeah.
is denial.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's exactly what's happening. And back Lars and the Real Girl is that you find out Lars. Well, I won't spoil it, but it's a very similar arc going on there.
I'll have to.
And actually, you don't even have to. I mean, it's not even a spoiler because kind of up front that there's something tragic has happened, but the way he deals with it, and that if you yeah, denial, I mean, that's it, right? Is that you have to move out of that stage.
I guess we had it. I guess part of the conversation we had was comparing this movie of grief, and I guess life and death to a show I was watching. I'm not saying that you watched it, but the anime I watched where, um, where the good of it is more of is more of a cycle of rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about, when we think of hope of someone passing on, what is the difference between an Eastern thought and maybe a Western thought? Because I know this is kind of stepping away from Pig,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also kind of like helping people figure out the, I guess, the coping that different cultures have for different problems, for
Well,
the
could
same
it be
problem.
that he sort of was seeing the pig as a reincarnation of his
Yeah,
wife, right? Like that was, he was projecting her onto it, and yeah, yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Yeah,
yeah. Because I was
and that's why the
thinking,
Bible says, we don't grieve as people, um, who are not believers, because we believe in the resurrection, and we believe that this person will be resurrected. Whenever that is, the end of time, 5 minutes after they die, whatever that is, there's still
mhm,
a resurrection that gives new life, whatever that means. Yeah.
yeah, yes, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, that was like my big complaint about the anime, because the anime specifically made the ability just to pass on fully. In a lot of ways, they made it a negative, which what because they called it, because they used the word stagnation. And
Hmm.
so it made me think of, what if you used what if there was a secondary duality to that, where the passing on was not stagnation, but instead of a transcendence. Because in more of the idea that I'm thinking of is like the spirit being rebirthed in heaven, like when we get new bodies, that's in some way
Yeah.
that's transcendence.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the value of this movie, is that it shows you that whatever the death is, like when I was in seminary, the one of the guys who taught a pastoral class, he was a pastor for a long time, and he said that every time he does a funeral, he tells the family, like, to view the body, to see that there is a body there, and to actually touch it. He says, because that is reality. Because if you don't touch the dead body and feel, okay, it's cold, this is different, um, you can't move on. You're going to be stuck in denial. Which, a lot of
Mhm.
people say, oh, I don't want to see the body because I want to remember them as, whatever. I want that to be my memory. But the problem is, you aren't dealing with reality at that point. You're
Yeah.
dealing with a past it's not really a fantasy, but it's the opposite of reality. It's what you wish it would be, and then you're going to be stuck in one of these cycles where you either divert that into a pig or something else, until you're able to acknowledge and say, okay, this person has died, and I need to move to the next stage and accept this and grieve, which is
Yeah.
like so hard, and it's painful, and there's no way to grieve correctly. It's like everybody does it differently, but you have to go through that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm taking a class right now. I'm taking creative nonfiction, which it's becoming really weird to me. Well, not, I guess not weird. It's kind of, I'm figuring out that
Which is sort of a weird thing, right? Creative
creative
nonfiction. So
nonfiction.
yeah,
I
I like it.
I like it. I really do. It's also a big ego booster when it's like, you're actually very good at this.
I
um,
wouldn't know that feeling, but yeah,
I'm
I'll
guessing
trust you that
you
that's a good
never would
feeling.
know that feeling.
I'm never good at anything. Yeah. So
No, but I think the next part we have to write is a dialogue. And so the more I've thought about it, the one person I've actually had the most conversation with is my grandpa, who passed away. And so that's
wow.
probably what my dialogue is going to be.
Yeah.
So the more I'm going deeper into this, it feels more like this might be part of the memory process for my family.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
How long
uh,
ago did he pass away?
that was in 2019.
So
So a
not
couple
that long
years.
ago.
No,
Yeah.
not all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that. That may be what this paper may end up being, just because it's weird. It's we. I mean, not weird. It is, I guess, unique in how like your path trails. Like, I guess maybe put it the is if you're very very open to it to like listening to the world around you, the path you take will be one that you'll never expect.
Yeah. Because if you do take the one you expect, it probably is going to be unexpected anyway, right? It's never going to turn out like you think it will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just like thinking of even like how parents will say they want something on their children, like this is what you have to take. But if there's that openness, there's a difference between following your dream and walking your path. And I think if you're open enough to know what your path, if you're open enough to know that you may not know what's in front of you, which I think is really where I'm at. I do not know
Hmm.
what's in front of me, but if you have the faith to take this next step, you'll be able to keep going. And I think one of the things I'm interested about Pig, and I think it ends in a way that is very artistic, is you don't know what
Yeah.
Robin Feld's next step really is going to be. Um,
Yeah.
it's that last scene. I don't know if that's him accepting the grieving cycle, or if that's him kind of finally releasing any ties he has to the earth, and because people will die from grief,
Yeah.
and even in the process of healing, I think you might that may be the part of what happens in the healing.
Yeah. Because you hear that like couples who've been married for 60, 70 years, and one of them passes, and 2 days later, the other passes, and they've been perfectly healthy, and they're so tied together. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a positive thing that he's listening to the tape of his
Mm-hmm.
wife, you know, and that's what he needs to do to move to the next step, and it has to be healthier than where he's been,
Yeah.
living out in the middle of nowhere, totally detached from everybody. And maybe yeah, I would like to think he goes back and manages an Applebee's or something. That would be that
I mean,
would be poetic justice.
I
A
mean, I
joke.
think,
That's total joke. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, if we want to go with the more like postmodernism take and subvert all expectations, that's definitely what would happen.
That would be so funny. Yeah.
I
No, I
think
mean, I
the
think he would kind of get back in the scene, right? And follow his passion. So,
I I think it, but though it may be something a little bit different. Like I think he still wants to collect truffles, but I think he might have. I think his dealer that he sells to might end up telling him more of what's going on. So
yeah.
he's still like the long lost, Dawn that will come back when necessary, but he doesn't need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. And also because that character that was the buyer or
Hmm.
whatever with the truffle, his character had interesting development too, which I
His
enjoyed watching.
his
And
character felt like a person from Portland that did that is not that has experienced hardship, but doesn't but never was told how to get through it.
yeah. And he's trying to live up to his father in his father's shadow, and the superficiality. I think that was one of the things that comes through this is how superficial people can be as opposed to being authentic.
Hmm.
And I think he became more authentic throughout. Towards the end, I think he
Yeah.
started to be.
He started walking that path.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe in some ways he deconstructed part of his worldview. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Because he's not afraid to, because at the end of it he didn't like have a towel on the seat. I think that was a great detail for because Nicholas Cage, because Robin felt so dirty and he loves his car so much, he did
Yeah.
anything to protect the car. But at
Yeah.
the end of it, he cared more about Robin Feld than he did the vehicle.
Yeah.
So there is that deconstruction of being superficial occurring.
Yeah. Yeah. And you let that come into your life. And yeah. Yeah. So I give it 4 stars out
Yeah.
of 4 or 5. I don't know. I thought everything about it was pretty amazing. I liked that it was an hour and a half. It was just like,
Yes. It was short.
it happened and it was done, because some of these movies, like it could have easily been 4 hours, of just these brooding scenes of something, but
Yeah.
get in, get out, tell your story, move on. And that was one thing I really enjoyed about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was
And
so short. I think if I had to give it a rating, I'm trying to think of like the only thing that I may not be a big fan of is I wasn't a super big fan of the soundscape that it was using. So the sound of
Hmm.
it. But and that's just because I'm more focused on sound.
Hmm.
The visuals though I think were very, very good if I'm looking at it from a critical standpoint or a critic
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah.
But I it's still like a fantastic movie overall. It's a movie that most people could watch and not catch everything. And so
Oh yeah.
it's a movie you can watch twice. And so
Yeah, I need
it's
to
it
go back and watch it again, probably a few times to
yeah.
catch the stuff that was happening.
So it's at least a good movie, which
Yeah.
is I like to say that if it's good, it means you can watch it twice.
Yeah. And there's some of them you have to watch twice, like the Coen brothers movies. You almost
Mhm.
have to watch them 4 or 5 times before you feel like you've actually got what they're saying. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, good deal. Yes. So
Yeah.
there you go. That's a professional review of a movie. You get what you pay for.